is a new crime drama set in the 1970s that is based on a comic book by DC. Yes, technically it was under Vertigo, but Vertigo is still a DC imprint, so it's technically a DC movie. This is a film that stars Tiffany Haddish, Melissa McCarthy, Elizabeth Moss, Domhnall Gleeson. Common shows up in this movie. That's way I could sum up this movie, is that there are three women, Haddish, McCarthy, and Moss, who have married into the Irish mob, and then their husbands get busted and they get sent away to prison. Because all three of them are kind of in a dwindling financial situation with their husbands gone, they have to kind of take it upon themselves to try to take over the neighborhood, take over the business that their husbands were running, try to create something big, something positive, something powerful for themselves, and they eventually become extremely powerful women who control the mob and who control the business, and that attracts the attention of other people, and so it becomes this big crime drama, this gritty crime drama set in the 1970s. While I am familiar with the book that this movie came from, I'm not going to use it as a reference in this video. I'd rather talk about what the film gets right, what it gets wrong. In general, if you feel like I've left something out from the comic books, trust me, it was on purpose. I heard a lot of buzz about this movie despite the fact that it bombed at the box office this past weekend. Like, nobody really went to go see it, and I saw a lot of critics killing this movie. Having seen it, I will say that I don't really know what the big deal is. I know film is subjective and people look at film in different ways, but to be honest, I didn't hate this movie. In fact, there are some things that I liked about it. I liked the performances overall in the film, especially Melissa McCarthy. I know a lot of people give Melissa McCarthy shit. Let's not beat around the bush. Melissa McCarthy has been in some shit movies, okay? I have sat on this channel and killed movies that she's actually been in. If you saw a film like Can You Forgive Me that came out last year, you know that Melissa McCarthy actually does have some very good acting chops. She's very good at pulling off more dramatic roles. She doesn't just have to be shoehorned into the idiot, bumbling comedic role that she always seems to get saddled with. It's fair to hate her in those roles and not like her in some of those movies. I'll be honest, if you've seen her in some of her dramatic roles, especially a role like this one, I think you'd be impressed. McCarthy was good in this movie. There are definitely some moments where she has to get more dramatic, more emotional, because that's what the scene demands, and Melissa McCarthy delivered. All the performances were really solid. Elizabeth Moss probably has the best thing, like the closest thing resembling a character arc in this movie. I will say the performance that stole the show for me was General Hux, aka Domhnall Gleeson, in this movie. He was actually pretty creepy and pretty good. He plays some kind of mob enforcer, and he's definitely got a couple of screws loose. I'm not going to say which screws or if they get tightened or anything, but trust me, he stole a lot of the scenes that he was in. The way that people dress, the culture, the way that people talk to each other, the way that the film is shot, and the way it captures that city life, I think that all of that was done on solid execution. So it gets an A in terms of that. There are some situations and scenarios in this movie that are funny in terms of dark comedy, crowd-pleasing to a certain degree, and definitely I would say that if you want to watch it with a crowd, that's probably the best way to watch this movie. I didn't come away like hating this movie. I also didn't come away overly impressed. This movie was just kind of okay. Like, it was just on, and I just appreciated some things, and then I got nothing. I think the biggest issue for me is the complete tonal inconsistency with which they tried to approach this script. The movie just jumps all over the place in terms of the tone and what kind of movie it's trying to go for. Some moments in the movie where they're trying to depict these women as sort of the new anti-heroes, and then there are other parts of the movie where they're trying to make them empowered pioneers. The movie never really seems to have a firm handle on which side of its story it wants to execute, and as a result, it doesn't really execute either of those angles that well. Some moments, the movie definitely tries to hammer home the graphic nature of some of the violence, how evil and how messed up this world is that they live in. Then there are other parts of the film where they kind of montage through it, and it's kind of happy-go-lucky, and it's, you know, butterflies, and it's kind of, nobody cares. There are a lot of scenes and a lot of moments with these characters in this movie that feel unearned, that feel like we got here a little bit too fast, and that's because the movie doesn't allow these scenes to breathe. It doesn't really allow anything to be fleshed out the way that you want it to be. There's inconsistency of tone, there's inconsistency in terms of character motivations. Like, character motivations, they get switched and shoved aside at the drop of a dime, and it's just kind of jarring to me. Like, everything about this movie in terms of its script and the way that it approaches its character, its tone, the violence in it, and some of the moments that they think are earned but they aren't, a lot of the ways that it approaches that felt very jarring to me, and as a result, I felt kind of bored at different parts of this movie. Like, I was just kind of watching it detached. As somebody who's a fan sometimes of Tiffany Haddish and some of the movies that she's in, I feel like she was kind of miscast. Her character is extremely cruel and mean-spirited and kind of cold and very dull and boring, honestly. Tiffany Haddish is an actress that has a lot of energy, a lot of good comedic timing. She's an actress that has some charisma to her. In this movie, that charisma is just gone, and it's replaced with nothing. And I just feel like that wasn't the best way to utilize her talents in this movie. I get it, she's only doing what the director and the writers are asking her to do. Like an actress like Viola Davis or something would have carried this role out better. Not just because Viola Davis is a far better actress than Tiffany Haddish ever dreamed of being. Viola Davis, I think, is better suited to carry out that type of style. Put it like this. Basically, if you have Samuel L. Jackson and he's one of the most energetic and loud and charismatic actors of this generation, of any generation really, and then you put him in some movies where he has to be a boring ass lifeless Jedi for 3 movies, I feel like that's not the best way to utilize his talents, and it's kind of how I felt about Tiffany Haddish in this movie. This movie's not offensively bad. I have no idea what people are talking about when they say it's like a really shit movie and like one of the worst movies of the year. Like, I don't see that. I definitely see a lot of issues with this movie that kept me feeling somewhat detached from it. By the end of the movie, I was just kind of like, well, it was on, and I saw it, and now it's over. The Kitchen was neither offensively bad, nor was it progressively good, and I am going to put this one in the Fortress of Solitude, where all average movies go. Those are my thoughts on The Kitchen. Tell me, have you seen it? Did you read the comic book? Tell me what your favorite DC movie is lately. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Superfan Show. Stay tuned for more videos, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.